Legends, welcome back to another week with Mr. Scoop, Lockie Smith. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Jamie. How are you going?
Doing well, doing great. Thanks for all the love you guys have been giving on these videos. We both really appreciate it. Lockie with his third crack on screen. He's getting better and better every week, which is great. So just kick us off today. We're going to go through a few questions that I asked for you guys in the Discord there. To start us off, we're going to say what to do with Panacea. Obviously, a few of these we're going to talk about because we're doing the buy, hold, sell video today. But Panacea, we can answer that one now, so we don't have to spend too much time. We'll just do a quick run over of his stats in a second. But what do you reckon we do with Mr. Panacea, Lockie? I own him personally, let's have an unbiased.
I think it's. I think it's a pretty good time to sell. I sold him a while ago, but after two really poor scores, if you haven't got Aitken and Burton in your centres right now, you're probably doing something wrong, and you can probably use somebody else's that keeper backup and use Panacea's money as a round 18 trade instead. I think his break-even's pretty darn high. I think his two last scores have been pretty woeful.
Yeah, it's a sad one because before that, like if you look at the scores, he was really from round 6. He's been great. A low score of 35 in that for a centre, which is great. And there's only 4 tries in there. Just the last 2 weeks, the tackles were down a lot. Like he had a 26 game there, but majority of the time he was around that 17 mark, and just no attacking stats in the last few really, which is very frustrating for me owning him and obviously wanting a good score out of him at 17, and had the potential of being a keeper. I personally think I'm going to move on from him, but it's a tough one, with obviously probably a few more wing fullbacks to come up lately, obviously with Latrell, Paps there as well. You've got potentially Drinkwater also. Like if you wanted to go for a Joey Manu, if you weren't going for Aitken and Burton, for example, there's a couple options there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think they're all pretty good options. I think what's hurting Panacea a little bit is that he did switch to right centre about a month back when the troops started coming back and they've started going towards Sevo on the left a bit more. I was worried it would happen. It didn't happen straight away, but I think it might be starting to happen now. And like the beginning of the season, the right side's turning into a fantasy wasteland for the edges, the centres and the wingers.
We're seeing that in a few teams. Hey, look at the Bunnies, obviously, and the left side's the strong side. And Kenner's couple of tries on the weekend, I was like, oh, that just looks like a Johnson try. Yeah, definitely something I think we need to focus on a little bit more from next year is just that which side they're on, especially sort of like Campbell Graham went to left and he'd been killing it until he got injured. So definitely something to think about. But yeah, great question on Panacea. I think I'll be moving him on personally. I haven't looked at my team too much, but that's the plan anyway. There's a couple of questions on who to captain this week, and I think we can answer this in a few ways. So there's one a little bit lower as to like having backup captaincies as well. My general thoughts around the captaincy is pick the best guy that you think, if it's an Origin guy, may back up, may not. And just make sure your vice captain is someone that's not backing up from Origin. And then, Lockie, based around that, who are the guys you're looking to captain this week and vice, potentially?
Well, Cleary's out, which is the big talking point about why a lot of us are talking about captains. I think I'm going to vice Hines this week. He's coming off COVID. I don't think I'll captain him, especially with like COVID fatigue and things, but I think he might be a decent vice. I think I'm going to go Papali'i versus the Warriors, especially since they've got a few outs as well. Back on the edge, I really like his scoring. He was averaging about 65 there earlier in the year before dropping off at lock, and now he's back with a 67, I think, last week. So I think he's primed to go. Cherry Evans as a captaincy option could be really interesting as well. He very often backs up and sometimes can go really, really big against teams with Origin stars out. Who do the Seagulls play this week?
That's a great question.
Let me check.
Have a quick look at that one for me. The Hines one's a very interesting one there with just how he reacts to COVID. Obviously, some people don't, they are fine backing up from that, but he's definitely, I would say, is the best option if we just go straight out from average, obviously, and then I would personally go DCE, and then I would go for Papali'i. Obviously, we can make that decision on DCE depending on how he gets through the game. If he gets through unscathed, then I'd probably captain him over Paps, but he was also incredible throughout the season. So I don't like in terms of at edge. So I feel like either way, you're going to do fine. Who do they play?
They play the Knights. Yeah, I'm with you. I think DC's a really good captaincy option this week in that case.
There you go. We've got some questions here. Interesting one. What's to do with Dylan Edwards and Blake Brayley? So if you currently own them, I think that, well, Blake obviously had a great game last week. Dylan Edwards is going to have to do a lot this week especially. So are they just a minimum 1 week hold?
I mean, there's nothing really wrong with holding them, especially with Dylan Edwards sort of puttering along between 40s and then the odd 60. So he's very close to a keeper. He's not going to be as high as like the elite guns, but for now, until you can move him on for someone a lot more easily, I think you can just leave him. Somebody like maybe if Dewey starts going really well like he used to in the halves, possibly Edwards to Dewey in a couple of weeks might be really interesting and get you some money as well.
Yeah, and the reason he's asking this question, with them both going okay, is just they're not complete keepers, right? So probably eventually moving them on, but right now I think you can just hold off. We got Cam McInnes there. We will speak to him in a second, but Cam McInnes to DCE, I personally think is not the best trade. We will have to see what happens with Cammy on the bench at the moment. They do have 4 forwards, so there's a chance he goes back to that 50 minutes. And if that's a regular thing, then he might not be a keeper. But he did get the 63 minutes last week, so I think he's definite hold. A wait and see. What do you think, Locke?
Yeah, he was trending down before coming back a bit last week. So with that decent score and decent minutes, I think you can wait a little bit and hold.
Yeah,
Cherry Evans looks really good, but he's no absolute certainty to score really, really well. So that's why we were talking about the vice and the captain options before. Somebody who definitely will play versus someone who definitely probably will, but might not, or something like that.
Yeah, so more just for this week. We're not sure on DCE, but from next week onwards, he's like a pretty close to a must-have, hey?
I reckon so.
Yeah. Would you go Panacea to Tass? Okay, I find this a very interesting one. He wants to hold Panacea coming up against Pompey. It's just really got an individual matchup, but coming up against the Warriors in general. Hey, we give the Warriors some crap, but they won last week. And
yeah, they did.
They could do it again.
They had a great one coming.
And the Eels are struggling. They're up and down, so who knows. But needs to bank the cash for Murray and Cook. What are our thoughts on Tass? Are we just going to, again, go with the fact like we spoke about last week, was if you could pick him or Brandon Smith if you have a lot of trades left and you can make a bit of cash, get some decent scores and trade them out? Is that still the theory we're going to go? Otherwise, it's just not worth it?
I think so. He got 46 last week, and that's up with his 51, 48, 46. So he's got a couple of good scores, shows he can score well. He's up nearly at 400k now, so starting to get a little bit awkwardly priced. But if you can go Panacea to Tass, I don't think that'll be... I think you're getting probably similar scoring for a lot cheaper, and that money can be used to upgrade elsewhere, as they were saying.
Okay, so you don't mind it too much?
I don't mind it. I mean, I don't love it. If you've got a lot of trades, I reckon you can. But if you've got probably 5 or less, you can probably hold off on it, because Tass doesn't really fit into an elite gun. He'll be sort of your backup. And if you've got like a Cola, or if you don't have like a Cola, sure. But if you do, you probably want a lot of trades. But it's not strategically the worst if you do have a lot of trades.
Yeah, cool. And if you don't have many trades, if you want to get rid of Panacea and downgrading to upgrade elsewhere, I think go to a 220, 240, who you could if you have to play them this week or not. But if you've got only 1 or 2 cash outs, you can drop down to 1 more and use that money to get to Murray or Cook, I would say, from there. Next one here, we got Mam to Dewey. We'll speak about both of them in this video, so just keep plodding along their pads, and we'll answer that question for you. Is having 4 trades for last 6 rounds purely for injuries okay, Matty B? So I'm assuming 4 left plus the 4, or are we going to say 4 completely? It sounds like it'll be 0 right now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
If you're getting close to your final 17, right, like with these trades you're going to use this week, I'm assuming that's why you're asking that question, then half okay, but not ideal, right?
No, it's not ideal. You'd want at least 2 or 3 of your emergencies to be scoring okay and playing, so to have that little trade with 6 weeks to go.
Yeah. Interesting one here for Rupee. Your opinion on some good 5 to 600k mid-ranges to upgrade my bench with. So with that one there, you're getting some 5 to 600 guys that might score mid-40s, right? But don't try and bring in a mid-ranger just for the sake of it. At the moment, we're looking if you are lacking team value, lacking cash in the bank, and you're going in that range, you want to be looking at guys like Latrell and stuff that actually have the potential to be keepers. Otherwise, you may as well just use we got Isaiah Tass, we got these guys that are averaging close to that 40 anyway, that are cheap, way cheaper than that, and you probably already have them in your side, whether it be Kohler or Xavier Savage, these types of guys. So try not to focus on that range unless you think they're going to be a keeper. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Little pro and con of Manu versus Aiken for me, Lock.
I would say Manu actually looks pretty decent if he's going to keep that spot in the halves for the rest of the year. Kiri's been out for a long time with that concussion, but I think I did hear that he trained a bit this week, so he could be only a couple rounds away. Manu will still score you quite well back in the centres. He scores 40 or low 40s while he's there. It's just the upside of him staying in the halves. We can score really, really well. He might go ahead of Aitken, but I think Kiri might potentially be close to a return now, so I probably prefer Aitken. With that centre scare the other week, it is a little bit hard to say for sure, though.
Yeah, that killed a few of us, eh? Well, it happens. Jackery asks, who's the best mid in the game right now to buy? It's Cam Murray for me, clear as day. Yeah, a lot of people don't have him, to be fair, so that's that. Let's go a couple more here. We got best cash out option. We will speak about a couple. We got Matamua already. There's also another couple this week, which we got in there. Aaron Booth as a potential one. Zach Hosking, you might get a good score out of him if you would like to play him this week. I'm pretty happy with that. Him still getting named, but don't really need to speak about him too much. I haven't got him in our list, but got a 55 last week. Obviously not too expensive if you want him at 250 odd, 260. If you just need him to play this week and have that little bit extra cash, but yeah, just there's a couple of 220 guys. That's all we need to really speak about. Is Jack Bird a buy? I'll add him as well. I didn't put him in the group, but we may as well talk about it now. What are your thoughts on Jackie B?
Yeah, I think he's got 260s in a row now. I wasn't hot on him probably until that second 60, because he has shown in the past he can do a lot of missed tackles, and the demerits can really strip him of what could be a decent average. However, those 3 or 4 weeks after he broke his wrist, I think it was, he really struggled and had some really low scores, came down a lot in price. What's he at now? 545. So back up to similar to where he was before. But his missed tackles have gone down a lot in the last couple of weeks. But he has done that in the past. You can see up in round 5, 6, 7, he had 131. So I'm still inclined to think that it's just a little blip.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
If it was 456,
he misses so many tackles, hey, just regularly.
Yeah, if it was 450,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, if it was 450 or 500 instead of nearly 550, I'd really consider it. But it's almost like you're trying to buy a Talakai at that price for possible gun, but probably not. So I don't really like it anymore.
Do we have him at maybe 5th best centre?
What have we got? Burton, Aitken, Manu, Campbell Graham's injured. I'd say he'd be close.
Yeah. He'd probably be close. Right now, he'd be 4th best. It's just if you want to go for it at that cheaper price, again, it's a bit of a risk, but if your team value is low, you could take a punt. If it works, great. You can use that money elsewhere to maybe get a Cam Murray or something. If it doesn't work, then you know why it doesn't work, I suppose. Probably the only thoughts. I'll go last one here for the questions. Bus Lane, safe to hold off a week on trading guys out with manageable/beatable break-evens like Tungo, Reed Marnie, Mam, and Hughes, or go guns blazing now and flick them for the Aiken, Cooks, Grants, DCEs and get the strongest 17 ASAP. Well, what are your thoughts, Slog?
I think flicking for non-origin guys like Aitken's are really good. Guys like Marnie are a little bit harder to flick when you might not have great cover or great hookers otherwise. Tungo, quite good. Hughes, you probably only just brought in. Mam is close to peaking. I don't mind trading him out this week, but you can definitely hold off a couple more and squeeze an extra 30, 40k out. And if he scores a try and pushes it, his break even down a little bit more, he might make a little bit more than that. So I don't mind trading out probably Mam and Tungo this week, but the others not so much.
Very fair. And we do see, like, Damien Cook had a cracking game after Origin last time and stuff like that, which is helpful. But really, in terms of that question for me, it's around getting as many points as possible from here to the end of the season. And the quicker you trade these guns in, if we're hoping they're playing every week from here on in, you're getting that extra 20, let's just say it's 20 a week for someone like Cook over a Tungo, whatever it is, 25 maybe even for that one, if you can make that trade. And for each week you wait on that, yes, you might gain 10K, 15K for holding on to one of those guys, but you're missing out on that 25 points each and every week you hold off. So that's the general thoughts from now. Given everything's done, all the buy rounds are done, it's time to get that 17 as quick as possible. Obviously not removing any cover and stuff that you have if you have low trades, but the quicker you can get to 17, the best. Yeah, the better, for sure. All right, let's get into our buys to start us off. In Latrell Mitchell, what are our general thoughts on Latrell after that game on the weekend? He's had 2 games in return. He's kicking goals, which I find very interesting. What are your thoughts on Latrell?
Yeah, he showed that he can really pull Souths up when they need to be. I think it's hard to say exactly where he'll sit in the elite or near keeper wing fullbacks, but he definitely showed that he can score well. And with the Bunnies sort of around the bottom of the top 8, I think he'll need to be firing for them to go well. I think he's a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, that's a good point too. He's going to need to, and that's the thing with like someone like DCE, is that with them low in the 8th, 9th as well, somewhere there, 7th.
Yeah, I think they moved into 8th.
Yeah, important for them to win majority of their games. So DCE will be backing up. He should be scoring well. He needs to for them to do well. And it's going to be similar for Latrell. My only thoughts here is that they played the Eels and they pumped them, right? Got the 43. They then played the Knights and they put a big score on them as well. So the 43 and 61, if they're having those lighter games, we've seen what's happened with guys like Blake Taff, obviously nowhere near the caliber, but their guns in terms of Walker and stuff like that, when they aren't playing that well, they're susceptible to those lower scores. Latrell, the only thing there is you see over the last few years that the consistency has been there. If he has a really low score, it's a 24, it's a 32. Like, he doesn't have those 15 games that he has had when he was a lot younger. So I think overall you're going to get the big score, the 70 or 80, and then you'll have the 30 odd and 40, maybe 2 weeks in a row, and that's going to scare you if they don't play well. But I'm also impressed with the narrative of him going overseas and really looking after his body and putting in the time and effort. So if he's come back, great. Thankfully, he's got through 2 games. I know like the stats around re-injury rate on those hamstrings is about 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, you're kind of almost in the clear. Would that be something like that? Been learning from NRL physio. So yeah, I think if you want a cut price keeper, he should be in the 600s at a minimum. If he can go really well, it can be 700k. So you can make some money, use that money elsewhere. My general thoughts on Latrell. DCE, we've spoken about him, is pretty close to a must-have, and the reason for that being is he is the third best after Nico Hines, but I think we should use Nico in the wing fullback position. The second best half in the game with a 61.5 average. Any general thoughts, Lockie, or we just try and get him in?
Yeah, I think you've got to bring him in very soon because he's on the up. He's pretty much as cheap as you'll ever see him for the rest of the season, and I think his draw's not too bad. So DCE, like Latrell and like a couple of other players, is one of those guys who can just go out and score you 100 one week, and you'd really hate to not have a guy like that in your team. He's owned by quite a lot of people in the top 100 too. So it's proven that he's done them really well. And I think bringing him in is pretty much a must-have, as you were saying. Munster is averaging similarly, and he's much more pod, but he's got like a high break-even coming off COVID, and Cherry's done really well this year. And I just feel like unless you can wait, I don't think you can go anybody else except DCE.
That's fair. If you have Cleary, Hines obviously, and your second half is like a Jerome Hughes, a Mitch Moses, or something like that, do you try and trade up to DCE, or are you okay with waiting a few weeks? And if there's an injury or something like that, you can bring in DCE then?
If you're low trades, I think you can go for that approach. But I think if you've got any sort of decent number of trades left, like maybe 7, even 8, I think you really should bring him in and have that other half on your bench as your sort of backup gun.
Yeah.
Especially for guys like me who have Dylan Brown at the moment, a little bit underperforming. I'm very strongly considering DCE this week so I can put Brown on the bench.
Okay, so still thinking about holding Brownie. It's just having a clearer second gun.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty low trades. I don't know if I can trade Brown out as well. I'm seriously thinking about it, but I don't know if I will at this stage. But I do want Cherry Evans instead of Brown scoring for me in the halves for sure.
Cool. And the reason I'm asking that question is just that obviously position-wise, there's a couple of positions where super important to make sure you're getting those top guns in your side. Like if you look at the hooking position, for example, if you don't have Damien Cook, you're losing, basically. If, that 4 or 5 weeks there with Matt Burton going nuts, if you didn't have Matt Burton, you were losing, right? Centers, wing fullback, and I feel hooker are the 3 most important. If you don't have the Cook, if you don't have the Burton and one other great player, obviously someone like Kohler and stuff has been doing a decent job, but overall they're going to have a 25, whereas you're not going to get that from the Aitkins and stuff like that. Same down below with having Hines, Tedesco, Pat, for example. If you had that 3, you're sitting and you're happy. You're not worried that overall they're going to average like a 35, over a stretch. You know that they might have an 80 and they might have a 30 in their game, but they're going to average 50 something, right? That's my only thing with the DCE one is that if you already have those few guns in there, you could probably wait a little bit longer. I think I would prioritize some other positions first. Would you agree?
I think so, especially if you've got a guy like a Savage or a Kohler starting for you regularly. I think it's much more urgent to trade out for a gun so you can shore that up and probably upgrade like maybe 15, 20 points instead of maybe a 5 to 10 point upgrade with DC in the half. If your team's strong, go DCE. If you really need other positions strengthened up, do that for sure.
So that would be where Dylan Brown to DCE is probably not the best because it's like, it's an upgrade, right? For sure, like a 10 to 15. But is it worth upgrading a different position first? It probably is, right?
Yeah, it's a luxury trade if your team's sitting pretty. It's a trade for the top teams pretty much.
Yeah, that's fair. I just wanted to bring up Josh Curran. So you've got 2 games with him back in the second row now, and it looks like in terms of team lists, so they've got Tohu in the middle in terms of front row, playing Jazz in 13. I'm not sure if that'll change on game day, but it looks like we can get 80 minutes from Joshy in that edge position. What are your thoughts around him?
I've been watching to see how Curran goes on his returns since he got injured because he has gone quite well both lock and second row in the past. I think last year he averaged like 56 there. That was under faster game, but I still think he can be pretty much a keeper, nearly a gun at quite a cheap price. He hasn't hit a good score since his return yet, though. He's got 51 and a 49. That's pretty close. It's a little bit hard to jump on now, but definitely have him as top of your watch list to bring in if you are running low on trades and need somebody to be a keeper in the second row.
Yeah, there's a lot of... That's probably the only thing. We've all got a lot of mids and second rows, and we're holding guys like Elliott that have sneakily become guns and stuff like that. So we probably, we got McInnes as Offengawe. There's so many guys now that we probably don't need to. But for me, it's probably... If you're interested, it's the cheaper price. So you're getting him, he's probably going to average at least 50, 51, 52 maybe. So you're getting him cheaper than what he's currently priced at, scoring, sorry. And then you get the dual position and he's a pod. They're the 3 things. Simple. I won't do it personally, but you can as well. Murray, the beautiful man, it's a great photo. He best mid in the game, 816k. He's averaging 64, and you're getting him under that price, really. You're getting him at what's 816? About a 58?
57, 8, yeah.
Yeah. And that's just off him having a couple of lower scores, but, in and around Origin and stuff like that. That 49 in 44 minutes, for example. But, the last 2 games have been great, and we just need him in our side. So just get him in as soon as possible. Obviously, I think Cook's more important at a first port of call, and then probably Murray, and then it'll be Murray, and then your wing fullbacks, and then like a DCE, I'd say, would be order of call for me. But this is the interesting one here. Talk to me about Mr. Adam Dewey. We'll get back his scores from last year because that's what the most important part is. is those 5/8 scores. Talk to me about Mr. Adam. He's a bit of a crush of mine last year until he got moved to centre. So
Yeah, he's one of those guys who can be an absolute fantasy gun when he's in the right position. Centre has brought his price down quite a lot. Last year, he averaged like 60 or something at 5/8, and I'm just waiting for him to get a good score when he's named there this week before I really jump on. And he's got to break even like 70. You can definitely wait a week, but I really, really like him as somebody to bring in probably for like a wing fullback gun if he starts going well, because he's ridiculously cheap. He's like if you jumped on Brian To'o at the beginning or Latrell Mitchell a couple of weeks ago, but potentially even safer if he can sort of do what he was doing in the past.
Yeah, so look, obviously a slightly easier game this week with the Penrith guys out. We've got Cowboys and Broncos, which will be tough in 19 and 20. And then, generally, it's pretty tough set up there. We've got Newcastle, which will be an easier one. Cronulla, by that stage, I think they'll be rare and pumping there. You got Roosters, which is a tougher one, and then probably Dragons being a slightly easier one. So probably only 2 games there, 3 including this week. That'll be slightly easier for him. But that didn't matter for him last year, right? Like he just was that good. And just be, as you said, just waiting on him and seeing how he's feeling after his injuries. Obviously got through the 80 minutes last week and did kick goals as well, which is great to see. So there's definitely some potential for him. And with that higher break even, you might be able to pick up a gun in the wing fullback or half at under 500k. So I think there's no harm in waiting and watching this week and going from there. But definitely a potential buy in my eyes. All right, just a quick one on Matamua. We had one game from him last week, got the 16 points for 22 minutes. He now gets moved to the edge, which is very, very interesting. And Luke Garner goes back to the bench, which for those that own Luke, what are our thoughts on Lukey? Do we move him on now?
Yeah, he was sort of supposed to be, if you jumped on him maybe 5 weeks back, I think I was saying he might be a keeper centre if he stays there. And he's done close to that, not quite as good as we were hoping, but now he's on the bench. He's not going to do you any good, so I think it's a good sell. Matamua might be subject to something like that, the rotations with Tuilagi, what used to be Luciano Leilua and Garner, but there's one less now. Matamua looks pretty good, especially as a 220k cash out where he could potentially sit there or on the bench for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so I feel like if you're bringing in a cash out right now, it's obviously building up some money so you can spend elsewhere. And if you need him to play in your 17 this week, he could be a decent one. Could get you a 30-40.
Yeah, I think so.
Thoughts? Would you even bother with someone like Aaron Booth?
It's hard to say how many minutes. It's hard to see how many minutes he gets, hey, because finally they put him starting ahead of Aaron Clark. But is that just a ploy to give Aaron Clark 50 minutes off the bench and Booth only gets 30? It's really tough to say.
Yeah,
so he looks decent. Like, he's not the worst, but I think Matamua was safer and cheaper.
Yeah, if you're using that. Because you're not using him to make money, right? You're not bringing him in for that reason. You spoke about Munster. Just a quick one on him. Obviously, he's recovering from COVID. He is named to play this week and will play. So he's one of the clear guns that you could select in your halves as well. If you wanted to go against DCE, a little bit more of a pod play than Munster would be a man. But I can see them averaging fairly similar across the year. Munster just has more of those higher scores and then some lower ones. And DCE is a little bit more consistent. So I think just base it off how you react to when players score for you in fantasy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so. If you're gonna hold Mam another week and then wanted to upgrade to Munster instead of going DCE this week, I think Munster could be a good option at like 20-30k cheaper with that really, really big break even. But he is that type of player that might get an 80 this week and hold that price. So
yeah,
he's pretty good. I slightly prefer DCE, but Munster's really good as well, and pod.
Yeah, some people just like watching him play, really, right? And you can get those like 20-30 point efforts in one place, which is pretty cool. And we speak about McInnes, and he's still owned by a big chunk of people. Obviously, 73 of the top 100. Break even slightly higher after his 40 and then the 49. But I think we just decided we're just going to hold him for another week or so and work it out. There's no real harm in that. He's not like he's going to be losing heaps of cash. He's priced just under 50, we'd be looking for him to average over that. And if he's like a high 40s guy, then that's an issue. But until then, I think we just hold steady. Ezra Mam, talk to me about him. What are your thoughts on him at 464 now? Still owned by a good chunk of people. Is it time to move off?
It's very close. If you want to jump off this week, you definitely can with the making a bunch of round 18 trades to get guns. He's definitely a great stepping stone to get you there. He might have a little bit more to go in terms of money making. He might push up towards 500k because all it takes is a decent score to push him a little bit higher. His break even's 30. If he gets like a 45 against, who's he playing? Oh, he's playing the Titans. He can probably get a 45 this week with Reynolds sort of not doing as much now that he's got that ribs injury that he's managing for a while. So Mam won't score you like that 20 that he potentially was looking at when Reynolds came back initially. I think you can definitely hold if you want to hold, but if you've got a few trades you want to make for around 18 guns, he's a perfect stepping stone. So I don't really mind either way.
Cool. I think he is more of a sell than Xavier Savage, just based on the price, that extra 50k. Again, agreed with you. Just definitely could hold him this week. You could definitely trade him out. You could wait 1 week. All are fine if you want to use that cash elsewhere. I think you can do that. Do you trade him over someone like Kohler first? I think so.
Yes, I think
just based off the high score that Kohler got last week.
Yeah, Kohler's got a bit more money compared to Mam, I think, and he's been improving this week.
The center and wing fullback coverage too, I think, helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we basically spoke about Savage, but it's no CNK anymore, which helps him, and I think he has a chance to get a 40 or 50 on a regular basis over the next few weeks. Obviously, it could be a harder one against Melbourne this week, but then you've got Warriors and Titans, and it could be, at worst, you sell him at that Penrith game, but could be before that. I think you've got another week or two of him making some cash, at least anyway. You might not have to play him, depending on how many guys you got out this week, but you might not have to play him if you want to. But if you do play him this week, you're hoping that he does something special. And he can, right? He's a youngster that has plenty to prove. Mr. King, Joshy King, do we just say sell? Sell, sell, sell?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to sell. He's not done much recently.
Yeah.
And he's not really useful to hold anymore because round 17's gone and done.
He played 60 minutes last week. We got that back, but only the 31, which was not nice. Adam Reynolds, this is a scary one for me. In my head-to-head team, I was looking at going Reynolds to Cleary, which is someone I don't have. And I think that was a very easy trade to do, just with him not performing as well. And obviously the ribs causing a few issues. And he's just not playing perfectly. Obviously the last 2 weeks has been killer. Before that, he was amazing. So it's obviously affecting him because they did win well last week and he still played poorly. Do you just give him another week or are you starting to worry?
If you want other guys, I think you probably have to sell him unless you've got really, really low trades. I just think that he's a bit like Hastings, where he had that niggle that he was managing with his ankle for quite a while, and it hasn't been great since then. I think you're looking at something similar with Reynolds. It's not going to go away for a while, and if he's going to score you 40s and 30s instead of those 55s that you're accustomed to, I mean, he's going to drop like a stone. I think he's a good sell this week.
Yeah, so I'm tempted to go instead, like to go to DCE or to Munster, but it's a tough one when you saw how well he was scoring before. That's the issue. All right, we've got 3 minutes. Let's go. Dylan Brown and Reed Money. Let's finish it off. So Dillbags, 642 now. He's priced, 46, 45 now. Not ideal. Scoring great at the start of the season. The last bunch of weeks, there's been a lot of 40s, a lot of high 30s, which is killer. What do we do?
I think you sell if you've got even moderate amount of trades. If he hadn't got that 81 in round 12, which is a long time ago now, you haven't even considered holding him because he got 64 in round 9 and then 50 in round 7, and then you have to go all the way back to round 4 before he scores well again. So like,
it's weird, hey?
Yeah, he looked really great to start the year. Yeah, and he looked really, really good to start the year, as the Eels did. The Eels, as predicted, started okay. We've got the wobbles mid-season, and Dylan Brown's sort of gone down along with them.
Yeah, that's probably the interesting one. That he was obviously scoring better when they were, and fair enough, he's an absolute superstar, but seems to be relying a lot more on attacking stats this year than he was previous years, which was interesting. So yeah, maybe that slightly slower game means less tackles for him, and it hasn't worked out as well. But yeah, we got some good moments out of him. It might be time to move on if you can get a DCE or something like that. 6 trades, 5, 6 trades and up, you could probably move him on if you have no issues. If you have other issues, I think you just hold steady. And then Reedy. So you mentioned earlier about just the coverage. You know, if you went from like a Reed to a Cook is obviously a great upgrade, but if that leaves you with no coverage, is that an issue?
If you have no coverage at all and you're going Reed to Cook, I mean, you're not making your situation worse, so I don't mind it at all.
True. If
you are selling him for somebody that isn't a hooker and you've only got a grant, I don't think you can do that. I think if you're going Marnie to Cook, I think that's good. Other options for non-hookers, I don't particularly like as much.
Yeah, I'm personally interested. So we got a minute. Getting Cook, and then potentially getting Cotter when he comes back, and having him as cover.
Yeah, I quite like that, Cotter in your mids, and then move him around if anything goes wrong.
Yeah, I think that's probably the general theory. It's just been annoying. Hey, why? Like as soon as I bring him back in, he gets high 40s again. I don't want to rant too much about him, but he's owned by 51% he's 51 of the top 100. So yeah, a lot of people just thought he would continue with that mid 50s that he was doing, and it was only one try in there in that middle section where he just kept getting 50 plus every week. So an annoying one. You could hold and he could still get that low 50s score for a week or two. I don't think he's an urgent sell given his price is already down in the mid 40s average. That's my general thoughts. But that's the buy, hold, sell for the week, guys. Let me know if you liked that way of doing it with Lockie rather than just talking myself and obviously those questions as well. But big thanks to Lock for jumping in again. The insight is great as always. So thanks again. Anything you want to say?
Thanks for having me. Hope this helps with your trades this week because I think we'll be making a few.
Definitely. Good stuff, man. Catch you later.